This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Boy, oh boy, we have a lot to get to. I want this disclaimer out there first and foremost. We are recording this podcast at roughly 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If anything breaks after we're done, don't yell at us. We can't control the news, okay? We just react to what's happening. He's Greg, I'm Nick. This episode is brought to you by Prizepicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. We have a bunch of NFL news flying around, Greg, that we will get to in a couple of minutes. But first, we have to start with the news in our own backyard. And, of course, I'm talking about Stefon Diggs. As we know, Stefon Diggs is going to be released next week. It was reported by multiple insiders on Wednesday. Your reaction to the news and why you think this happened now?
So my reaction is I need to see what else they do. I understand the argument, and I understand from talking to people around the team, this was really from what I understand, this was really like a football decision. This was sort of like it was a byproduct of what you saw from the offense in the postseason. That, they didn't score many points. They weren't that explosive. They went against better defenses. It exposed sort of that they were, they had some guys, older guys, Diggs, Hunter Henry, Mac Hollins, people like that, they just turned out the Patriots were limited in what they could do. And you could also see this in the second Buffalo game. And this was really a decision, I think they probably made it a while ago, at least coming out of the season, where they're just like, well, is Stefon Diggs going to be better next year? I think was the essential question. And I think their answer was probably not. And you can talk about if he was, you could ask the question, if he was cheaper, would he still be here? Maybe. But I think, remember, this is still an outfit that's building. And we heard that from Mike Vrabel and Elliott Wolf. I'm not just going to sit here and say, this was the right move, this was the good move. I'm not, because I don't know what's on the other side. Now, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, and we got to think that the Patriots have some idea that they're going to get younger, maybe not cheaper, they're going to get faster, what have you, at wide receiver, whether that's Alec Pierce or AJ Brown or whatever. But until I know that to be true, I'm not going to say this was the right move, a good move. I didn't think it needed to be done now. I think if I were the GM of the Patriots, I think I would have waited. I would have waited until, I would have waited until I saw what I had and maybe done something later, because I do think that this $6 million guaranteed had offsets in it. And I think that Stefon Diggs is the type of guy, sort of like, well, it's going to be different because he's not coming off ACL, but, it might be the second, third wave, but he's not coming into, I don't think he's getting off his couch for less than like $10, $15 million guaranteed for somebody to play this year. But, basically, like I think Stefon Diggs still had good football in front of him. This was going to be the second year after ACL surgery. I think the Patriots could have gotten one more good year out of him. Now, if they use that money, and we're talking about $22 million cash, and you and I have been talking about cash for a while now, if they put that cash towards Alec Brown or Alec Pierce or AJ Brown, then I'm okay with it. I understand that. That's what we talked about on the last one. I talked about, Alec Pierce is the type of guy at like 26 years old who I think has his best football in front of him, that if I can get him and take and apply Stefon Diggs' money to Alec Pierce, then I'm okay with that. I'm fully on board with that. But if the Patriots are going, well, we want to see internally how we replace this, and and that kind of thing. And then I'm not a big fan of it because I do think that they could get another good year out of Stefon Diggs, but we'll have to see what they end up doing.
I was just distracted for a moment because I'm getting all choked up here. Just noticed that Jayson Tatum has been listed as questionable for tomorrow night against Dallas. Obviously, big Boston news. So Celtics fans listening to this podcast, watching us, Sham Sharani had tweeted out that Jayson Tatum will play this season and could make his debut on Friday against the Mavs. So gigantic Boston sports news there. As far as Diggs, I just can't believe that the Patriots made this decision without having some type of plan. I cannot fathom Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels, Elliott Wolf, Ryan Cowden, Stretch sitting at the table and saying, all right, if we get rid of Diggs, this is what we have on the depth chart. Are we all good with that in case we can't acquire somebody for Drake May? I can't imagine anybody in that room would say, oh, yeah, well, let's roll with that depth chart. I would not even be able to function, Greg, probably for a full month if this team walked into 2026 with that wide receiver depth chart. Mac Hollins, Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, Efton Chisholm, Kyle Williams. Good luck, Drake. I don't see it. And I have to believe that there is some type of plan, that they have their options lined up on a board, and they feel pretty confident that somehow, some way, they will be able to at the very least, they will be able to acquire somebody that will replace the production of Stefon Diggs. I can't imagine they're cool with the current depth chart. I can't fathom that idea. And whether it's A.J. Brown, Alec Pierce, we'll get to options and all that stuff. I've got to imagine they know they've got to support Drake May. They know that they just took out the guy who was their number one receiver last season, and they have to replenish there. They have to know that. Some other Patriots news here quickly. Jordan Schultz, formerly of Fox Sports, he tweeted out, this was a name that we brought up last year, Greg, as a possibility given Mike Vrabel's history in Cleveland. Jedrick Wills, a former top 10 pick, did not play in the NFL last year. He had dealt with a bunch of, health issues, inconsistency issues leading into last offseason. He's still only 26 years old, and apparently, according to Jordan Schultz, Jedrick Wills has visited the New England Patriots. Does that interest you?
A little bit. Look, Mike Vrabel knows Jedrick Wills better than anybody because he was in the Browns room his final season with the team. And, there's all sorts of questionable stuff about him on whether, how hurt was he? Did he shut it down? Basically, is he a quitter? So, Mike Vrabel would know better than anybody. So if there's some interest there, okay. I think if Vrabel likes him and is okay with the football character of Jedrick Wills, and I do think that is that's a huge question mark.
Yeah.
Then I think he could. I certainly wouldn't I'm not gonna sign Jedrick Wills and all of a sudden release Morgan Moses. I'm not doing that. I'll kick the tires on him if he's looking for a place to come in and be a good soldier for a year and be the swing tackle cheaply and then set himself up for free agency the year after. Okay, I might be involved in that, but I am going very cautiously because I'm not a big fan of his football character.
I can't imagine that he's going to fetch any kind of big number. He didn't play last year, the injury history, again, the inconsistencies, as Greg brings up, some football character questions. I would imagine this is, hey, if we lose Vidarian Lowe, is there somebody out there that we can bring in for, I don't know, $4 or $5 million, maybe even less than that? Let's say $5 million. Let's bring him in. He can play kind of swing tackle. And he's cheap. He has a ton of talent. There's no denying the dude's talent. It's just all the other stuff. All right, let's get to wide receiver again now. That's the Patriots news for the most part. And I'm keeping my eye on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see me looking down during this episode. It's because it's that time of year. I got to keep an eye on what's going on. But on Thursday, early afternoon, Greg, DJ Moore was traded from Chicago to Buffalo. The trade was Moore and a 5th-round pick in this year's draft to Buffalo for a 2nd-round pick, which leads me to say, what the hell is Brandon Beane doing in Buffalo? I know you're desperate, but a 2nd-round pick? I just read The Athletic yesterday as I was preparing, because we'll get to a Jonathan Jones report in a minute. It's tied into this. Jonathan Jones had the Patriots as a possible landing spot for DJ Moore, and I did all sorts of research on Moore, and there was an Athletic article written this week. And in The Athletic, there was an executive saying, oh, yeah, Moore will probably fetch you a 4th-round pick. And here's Brandon Beane giving up a 2nd, Greg.
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised that Buffalo did this. They love their questionable wide receivers. And, it reminds me of where the Patriots were sort of in latter day Tom Brady, because they kept whiffing in the draft, and the Bills have, whiffed on Keon Coleman. Khalil Shakur is a good player. It's taken him a while to get there. I think he was a 2nd-round pick or what have you. They haven't really been able to draft wide receivers up there. So they bring in, the likes of Brandon Cooks and, and these type of guys. And, it just seems like a long list of guys with Buffalo. It just reminds me of the Patriots back when they bring in Josh Gibson and, Brandon Cooks themselves. And, I don't know. I'm just glad that DJ Moore didn't end up with the Patriots, because that is a guy, speaking of football character, that I am not a fan of from what I've seen. I'm sure there are circumstances, and Chicago Ben Johnson was not the easiest place to play and all that, and Caleb Williams as a rookie and blah, blah, blah. But, you're betting a lot. I mean, a 2nd-round pick for this team and where they are, you're betting a lot that, and look, in Beane's defense, DJ Moore came from Carolina. He's from Carolina. So there's some background there. So you want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But to me, this is risky. I like it for the Patriots because it takes them out of, say, A.J. Brown or Alec Pierce. But I am not a fan of DJ Moore.
I'm okay with Moore. I think people remember some of the things I know you tweeted at me about him walking off the field and giving up on a play at one point. I know a lot of people remember, as I remember, the final route he ran in Chicago, which will not go into the Hall of Fame. But again, I did a lot of reading, and a lot of people in Chicago were sold on this guy and believe in this guy. And people might say, oh, well, that's just them trying to get a better price. But again, I was reading the insiders out there in Chicago, and they were swearing to this, saying, no, it's not about trying to get the best deal. The coaching staff does truly like the guy. They believe he still has a lot left. And there were multiple executives quoted in the Athletic piece saying he still has a lot of football left. It sounds like more it was a Caleb Williams kind of DJ Moore thing, where the chemistry on the field didn't quite click. And for Chicago, man, I mean, you're looking at what they have. You've got Roma Dunze and Luther Burden as your 1 and 2. You've got Colston Loveland, their rookie tight end, who went bananas last year. I mean, DJ Moore really is like their 3rd or 4th receiver option. To get a 2nd-round pick for your 3rd or 4th receiver is unbelievable value. And I'm not giving Brandon Beane the benefit of the doubt. I appreciate you, Greg, being nice, but I'm sorry. That's a massive overpay. Who are you battling against? Which leads me to this. The Jonathan Jones report, CBS. Interesting now when you look at it 24 hours later, Greg, with the context given. Jonathan Jones reported yesterday that New England was a possible landing spot for DJ Moore. So I've got 2 questions for you, 2 kind of scenarios. Did Chicago leak that to Jonathan Jones to drive up the price from Buffalo division rival. You just lost the conference. You just lost the division to him. So watch out. He might end up in New England if you don't pay us what we want you to pay us. Or was there a legitimate interest from the Patriots and they decided to walk away because they feel like they might have the inside track on another wide receiver option that is out there and available?
I don't definitely know the answer to that right now, but my guess would be someone, whether it was likely Chicago, because they have their motivations, that they dropped the Patriots' name to get the Bills to up their price and meet their price and overpay for DJ Moore. So if that's the case, great job by the Bears. I just the way Mike Vrabel has built this thing, maybe they would have considered DJ Moore if they struck out on some other things, what have you. But I doubt that the Patriots had much serious interest in DJ Moore.
All right, so you've got DJ Moore going to Buffalo. Again, it's Moore and a fifth for a second. If you're Philly, if you're the Patriots, and you're still having conversations about A.J. Brown, how does the Moore deal, if it does, impact a possible trade of Brown to New England? Does this kind of give you a template, Greg, to base the hypothetical Brown deal on now that we see somebody who's, DJ Moore is pretty much the same age, I believe, as A.J. Brown. DJ Moore is going to be 29 in April, and I think A.J. Brown's right around 29, right? A.J. Brown's going to be 29 in June. So literally, DJ Moore is 2 months older than A.J. Brown. Does this help you get closer to the true value of Brown?
I think so. I think it does help, but the question is timing. And like Jeff McClain said on this podcast last week, for various reasons, Howie Roseman is sticking to a very big ass, like a first and a second, where, as Jeff said, he talked to one league source similar to what you just said about DJ Moore, like a 4th round pick. Another league executive thought that A.J. Brown was worth more like a 3rd round pick. But if I'm Howie, I'm driving a hard bargain. Again, the thing with A.J. Brown is because of his contract and all the dead money the Eagles already have, they already have $50 million on the books. A.J. Brown before June 1st would be almost another like 45 million of dead cap for the Eagles, which is just absurd. 50 million is a lot, and they're already there. So, if you're Howie, you're thinking like, why am I in a rush? Now, you could say people are going to run out of cap space and it's going to be post-draft and all that stuff. But, Howie could take this into, say, the trade deadline next year. So, yes, in theory, I think it's a more accurate representation where I think A.J. Brown's compensation is going to be. I think it's going to be probably a second and some sort of pick swap later on. But it's just a question of when does Howie get there?
Yeah, I see some people saying that because Moore went for a second, Brown has to go for a first. I don't necessarily buy that.
Right.
I think there are different possibilities here. I would also say this. Ben Solak of ESPN did a freaking fantastic job of breaking down A.J. Brown's contract. Breaking down A.J. Brown. I like that. I would suggest people go read it, but because it's the most in-depth look at the dates and what it means and how much leverage Howie Roseman actually has, which Solak's argument is he doesn't really have much. And Solak's point is this is just one excerpt. Again, Solak writes like the magnum opus every time, so it's long.
Mm-hmm.
But here's one excerpt. The Eagles could carry Brown through June and July and into training camp, waiting for a suitor to spring. But there is a hard limit on that clock, as Brown's 2026 option bonus is paid in one lump sum in September, just before the regular season begins. The Eagles would have to deny the bonus and let it become base salary. Otherwise, they'd be unable to trade Brown during the season, and he'd be stuck on the roster for another year. That is a huge piece of information, because if you're the Eagles and you're saying, well, we'll just wait, we'll just kick the can down the road, as Greg said, we'll just wait until the trading deadline. Worst comes to worst, if he blows up the first few weeks, we'll just get rid of him then. Well, that option bonus makes it much more difficult for Philly to do that. So it's like you got to make a decision on A.J. Brown before the season, before September. And it's like if you're going to keep him and it blows up, boy, oh boy, did you screw this whole thing up. And if you hold him until June, until post, the designation date, teams already have gone through free agency in the draft. So, now if you're Howie Roseman, you're hoping that those teams don't address the wide receiver need and they're willing to give you, a pick that might be better. How many teams have addressed it? Now you're dealing with fewer teams to trade Brown to. This dance is very, very layered. And in 2026, when people try to just break everything down in its simplest form and don't necessarily add the context and nuance, the A.J. Brown conversation has turned into a ridiculous display. So there's a lot with the contract, and I don't think the Eagles have as much leverage as people think they do. Now, it all depends on if they think AJ is going to be cool. I'm not necessarily buying that, because I think there's a reason why Burt Breer and others have mentioned that Brown and his quote-unquote team has done recon about teams who were interested in him. I take that, and maybe I'm wrong, but I take that as kind of a little subtle shot across the bow of like, hey, if you're going to screw around with us and you're going to try to ask for a ridiculously high price, which nobody's going to pay, and you're going to stick me again with Jalen Hurts, I just want you to know, I know these other teams are out there and they're willing to maybe work on my deal, and maybe I'm inching closer to demanding a trade from Philly. I don't know if it comes to that, but I do feel like those types of leaks, they're done for a reason. And I think it's A.J. Brown and his representation trying to create a little bit of more pressure on Philly to eventually pull the trigger on a trade before the draft. I don't think Brown wants to be there as much as people think, and we'll see how it unfolds. But there again, the contract is convoluted. And I get it. It'll glaze people's eyes over. It glazes my eyes over, probably Greg's. But, there's a finite amount of time here where they can deal Brown. And I think they've got to be, like, if I'm Howie Roseman, I've got to be 100% confident that Brown will be cool in 2026. And what I saw in 2025, especially in the postseason, I don't know if I'd be super confident in that.
Yeah, Nick, related to that, I was talking to somebody this week who is familiar with A.J. Brown and his thinking, and pretty good source on this, and he told me that in his opinion that A.J. Brown was pretty miserable last year, and the question is, does that continue, and do you want a miserable person on your football team? That's
right.
Not really probably wise. And so,
right.
Yeah, I think that'll factor into how he's, I would say that if I had to guess, I would say that this is not going to drag on. I think that, I don't know if it's, in the next week or next 2 weeks, but I think there will be an A.J. Brown solution sooner rather than later.
That's been my argument the entire time, by the way, which this is going to come down to Brown. Like, if Brown walks in and says, Howie, I don't want to be here, you've got to trade him. You have to trade him. If you know he's going to be downright miserable, you have to trade him. If you know that he wants nothing to do with Jalen Hurts, or, he's going to cause trouble for your quarterback, you have to trade him. And at some point, no matter what the cap hit is and all the financial maneuverings, as Greg just said, and I've said this from the beginning, if he's going to be a problem, you got to get rid of him. Like, Denver got rid of Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's cap hit was like $1 billion. Miami is going to get rid of Tua. Tua's cap hit is like $100 million. Like, teams do it. Teams have to take huge cap hits, but it's only when they know there's no future. And so that's the biggest question, is if Brown is willing to push it or Roseman really knows. And I wouldn't get too lost in the sauce as far as what's being reported as what Howie wants. I want $1 million. It's not going to show up in my door front. So people can say that kind of stuff all the time. And I'm trying to find the tweet, but I saw it earlier today. And it was a great point by the former scout DNFL, who tweeted out, I think forget his name. I'm so sorry. It's Daniel Rotman. But he tweeted out the reports of DK Metcalf last year. And if you remember what people were, saying about DK Metcalf last offseason, the first report came out saying that Seattle wanted like a first and a third or something like that. And Seattle ended up with a second. So we can all play the game. All right. Man, got a lot more to talk about. This always happens. So much information. So many good takes from Greg and I. First, here's some thoughts from Greg about Prizepicks.
By the way, I just have to say this. With what's going on with Jayson Tatum, like, I've been watching the little videos of his comeback. I mean, it's just hilarious how this is like part 4 was, I think, yesterday. I assume part 5 is what, today or tomorrow?
Yeah.
Suddenly he's coming back on Friday night. I mean, it's just, oh my. This league, man, that league is just unfreaking believable. And speaking of that, with Prizepicks, you could put Jayson Tatum in your lineup. I'll be interested to see the more or less on Jayson Tatum. Shoot your shot on Prizepicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prizepicks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prizepicks makes every dunk, every dime, every board that much more exciting. So don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. My favorite thing about Prizepicks is picking multiple sports in the same lineup. With basketball going strong, with the playoff push, I could put Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum and David Pastrnak in the same lineup and root for both. Prizepicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Pick from all your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, esports, and more. Prizepicks now has early payouts if your lineup gets off to a hot start. You may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Download the Prizepicks app today to use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, it's good to be right. And by the way, Nick, I ain't coming back to be no role player.
I'm not getting into that. Let Felger Maz have fun with that one.
Mm-hmm.
The NBC shit, though, is hilarious. You're so point on. Like, it was so obvious when Peacock started to rush these episodes out. like the house was on fire. They held on to it the entire time, and then all of a sudden it was like episode 1 comes out, great, 2, 3, 4, boom, boom, boom. It's like, whoa, somebody wants the story out before he returns.
I'm just very glad that they were like 3.5, 4 minutes. Like, thank you, content people. I did not want to have to watch, not that I had to, but 15, 20, half hour of Jayson Tatum working his Achilles.
By the way, it is Daniel Rotman, so I can get his name correct. At Daniel_Rotman 15, who pointed out Seattle's asking price last year, first and a third round pick for DK Metcalf. The eventual compensation was the 52nd pick in the draft in the second round. So take that for what it's worth. All right, we still got to talk about Alec Pierce here. So Alec Pierce goes on Up and Adams, Greg, on Wednesday, and he pretty much tells the football world, nah, I love Indy, but I've earned the right to check out free agency, and I've earned the right to get the biggest contract that I can get. Does New England have a legitimate shot here?
I would think so. And, related to this whole Stefon Diggs thing, where you talk about, like, I can't believe the Patriots don't have a plan to replace Diggs. And I agree with you. And or I would be shocked if they didn't have another bird in the hand when it comes to, you make this Diggs decision. Like I said, take Diggs's cash and you apply it to somebody else. And the way these things work is at the combine, I'm sure the Patriots met with Alec Pierce's representation and, not really tampering, just conversations.
Yep.
Maybe they're just, talking to a wall and Alec Pierce's agent happens to be close by. And you say something like, hey, really like your guy, would be interested. This is what we're willing to do contract wise. Alec Pierce in that interview with Kay Adams, really talked up quarterback situations and knowing quarterback stability and knowing who he's going to have as quarterback. And when he was saying those things, I was like, Drake May, Patriots. I mean, I'm sure there are other teams that will come calling with stable quarterback situations, so you can cross the Bills off the list. I doubt the Chiefs because of their money situation, cap situation with Mahomes' contract. But all I could think of when Alex Pierce was saying those things was Drake May and the Patriots. And I think that whether it's Alec Pierce or AJ Brown, I think there were conversations in Indianapolis where the Patriots feel good about their chances. I think CJ LeBoy is a longtime agent, is Alec Pierce's agent. I think that, perhaps there was a conversation and the Patriots feel good that Alec Pierce would be receptive to maybe some of the contract parameters they Mike Vrabel or Ryan Cowden or Stretch or Elliott Wolf was saying to a wall.
You know me. You know me well enough now, Greg. I love this kind of stuff. You're just trying to connect the dots.
Here we go. Here we go.
the always sunny
yep. Mm-hmm.
gift. I just try to look at the timing of things, and so you go back 2 weeks ago, and I'm doing this all off the top of my head, so hopefully I remember every detail, and if I don't, whatever. But you go back like 2 weeks ago, and there was, or a week and a half ago, there was this thought during the combine of like, well, the Patriots would be open to having Brown and Diggs on the same roster, and you and I discussed that. And then we found out like, okay, well, Diggs, there's going to be a resolution here in the next like week or two with Diggs, no matter how this falls. And so while this is going on, you've got the Alec Pierce thing, and we all know the back channels happen, as you just mentioned, at the combine. People talk. That's really the biggest thing about the combine. Mm-hmm. And so Alec Pierce all of a sudden is a free agent. And you have out of nowhere kind of the DJ Moore stuff come out. And it feels like, all right, so the Patriots, as soon as the DJ Moore report comes out, as soon as Alec Pierce officially becomes an unrestricted free agent, the Diggs move comes out and that happens. And then you have Pierce pretty much at the same time. I mean, literally like an hour or two before the Diggs news comes out, goes on Up and Adams and says what he says. And you start connecting all of these dots. And now DJ Moore gets traded, who was linked to the Patriots. And now you start thinking, all right, well, that means the Patriots have to like their chances of landing one of the two guys that they have been linked to. Jordan Schultz reported last night. And look, it seems like Jordan Schultz has some kind of connection in New England. Okay. That much is obvious. You got the Jedrick Wills stuff. He has posted a lot of stuff about the Pats over the past couple of years. And after the Diggs decision was made, Jordan Schultz posted something along the lines of the Patriots have been looking at like the top of the wide receiver market and they're going to spend big. And so you take that information, the AJ Brown relationship with Vrabel, Alec Pierce, Michael Hurley came out with a bit of information. I don't think this means much. It's more fun than anything, but Alec Pierce's brother apparently played basketball at North Carolina. So take that for what it's worth.
Hurley bird.
So, you take that for what it's worth. And we also just know the history, Greg, right? I mean, it's also just the history of what we've seen over the past 3 or 4 years. The Patriots have been going crazy to try to land a legitimate outside alpha type receiver. They went after Ayuk. They went after Calvin Ridley. Godwin is not that type of receiver, but they went out and try to get, they leaked a bunch of stuff about Godwin. So he knew they were willing to pay a bunch of money. And Godwin himself, by the way, confirmed that on a podcast that teams were willing to pay upwards of $30 million a year. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that's the Patriots. So like the Patriots have shown the willingness for the past 2 off seasons going into a third. They have shown the willingness to put $30 million a year or so on the table, 25, 30, whatever, to pay almost at the top of the market for a receiver. So, I mean, we know what they've tried to do. AJ Brown's out there for like $25 million a year. Alec Pierce is going to make between 25 and 30, according to the latest reports. I find it hard to believe with what the Patriots have tried to do at wide receiver the past couple off seasons that they would release Stefon Diggs and just be like, nah, we good. We going into the draft. Like I can't. And if they're willing to pay the money, you go to Alec Pierce and you say, here's $30 million a year, Alec. And you got Drake May and Josh McDaniels. Like, I don't know if Alec would say yes, but it just makes a lot of sense. All right.
One thing I want to say on that, I just so we play the other side and
sure,
just so maybe I see, Nick's brain combust. I just want to ask your opinion. So, and again, this could be editors at play. I don't know. So, ESPN did, Mike Reese wrote a reaction to the Stefon Diggs thing, and then they also did a piece titled "What's Next for the Patriots and Stefon Diggs After Release," written by Mike Reese, Jeremy Fowler, and Jordan Reed. I don't know if you saw this. So they had like different questions, including what is the Patriots' plan at receiver? Now at the bottom it says this was written by Mike Reese. The first line in it was New England wants to focus on internal development. Okay, that was just period, end of sentence. And then they go into who they have, blah blah blah. And then the last paragraph in this section was the Patriots also figure to explore trade possibilities, with Vrabel having coached Eagles receiver A.J. Brown being a notable link, as well as the draft where they have 11 picks. I do find it interesting that Mike Reese, he's asked what's the Patriots' plan at receiver. He says internal development, and he does not mention free agency in this or Alec Pierce. So I just wanted to put that out there.
It's certainly fair to throw it out there. I do wonder if it's more of a, and by the way, the Bills, according to your buddy Bert, are guaranteeing $15.5 million in 2028 for DJ Moore. He'll be 31 that season.
What is Brandon Beane doing?
It essentially turns Moore's contract into a 3-year, $73.5 million with a team option in 2029. So,
and Bert says, if he plays well, good deal. Yeah. What if he's a turd, Bert? How about then?
Disaster. Absolute disaster. I'm seeing this from Carlos Lopez, who is Los Talks Packs.
Great. Patriots.
No, but he's quoting your guy, Jeff McClain. So I don't know. I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, it has to come from somewhere, and I'm guessing Carlos Lopez will inevitably tweet the reply that shows the source of where Jeff McClain said this.
Yeah, I'm sure he will, because those aggregators are always very
ethical. They do that. They do that all the time. They do that all the time. I'm going to be fair. Not all of them, but Carlos, he will do that. So I don't know where he's getting this, but I do trust that he got this from somewhere that Jeff McClain actually said this. And here's what he tweeted. The Patriots and Ravens are the, quote, most likely potential partners, unquote. If the Eagles were to trade A.J. Brown, That's according to Jeff McClain. McClain adds that to his understanding, Philadelphia is inclined to only deal Brown to the AFC. And to further what we had said a little while ago, in parentheses, Carlos Lopez has, oh, never mind. That's his own opinion. He says, I think he only gets traded if he forces himself out. So Jeff McClain, I don't know if he wrote it or he said it, but he is saying that Baltimore and New England are the most likely partners if a deal is made. And Philly only wants to trade Brown to the AFC so you can knock out the NFC. So again, take it for what it's worth.
Jeff has a tweet where he said the Bills trading for DJ Moore would theoretically take them out of the AJ Brown market. They checked in with the Eagles about their wide receiver. From what I understand, Patriots and Ravens are the most likely potential partners, as Jeff named those two teams along with the Bills when he was on this podcast last week, especially as I understand it, the Eagles inclined to only deal with AFC teams.
All right. So there you go. So Carlos was legit as I figured.
How about just retweeting Jeff and putting his work out there?
You could do that, but then that's not going to make you money or you know what I mean? So I've been guilty of tweeting stuff that people have written, but I do attach the article, and I have to imagine that. I have to imagine he will eventually tweet out, but I did repost Jeff McClain. So you're welcome, Jeff. You're welcome, buddy. And by the way, your Twitter picture, very cleaned up version of Jeff McClain after watching him on your podcast.
Yeah, he just come from the combine and was out, I think, until like 4:00 in the morning the night before.
So. my Jeff McClain on the pod you did with him. He had the hat on. He got the scruffy beard. He looked like he was out until 4 a.m. a little bit. Looked like he was not. The Twitter picture is suit, completely clean shaven here with a lot of product pushed back. The hey, look at me, Jeff McClain picture. All right, so two more things, and then we got to quickly zip through some of the NFL free agency with the Pats. Jordan Schultz reports that the Raiders are more open to dealing Maxx Crosby. I don't think that's a surprise. Schultz says that the talks are only going to intensify with this DJ Moore trade, Greg. I just feel like it's only a matter of time before Crosby's a Bear.
I would agree with that. And let me pose this question to you, and I guess I'll answer it first. If you had your choice between the Patriots could make one deal,
yes,
or one big splash,
yes,
and it's Maxx Crosby, or Alec Pierce and AJ Brown at wide receiver, what would be your preference? I would tell you that the number one need that I have on my Patriots offseason needs list is edge, because they don't have much there right now, especially with Caleb. I mean, they have nothing, and so
Harold Landry does not appreciate that comment, Greg.
Oh yeah. Speaking of aging, it's okay if Harold Landry, disappears and is hurt, and he's 30 something, but he's going to be okay the next year. But Stefon Diggs isn't and needs to go. I just find that a little bit interesting to me, but I would go. I mean, I love Maxx Crosby, but I think he's got a lot of tread on those tires. The compensation, I would go with wide receiver and try to figure out, like a Khalil Mack mid-level free agency type of thing at edge paired with the draft.
I completely agree with you. I think it comes down to supply and demand. And frankly, there are a lot of options at edge and not a lot of options that give you the level of play that Crosby does. Don't get it twisted. But we've gone through some of the names, and we're going to go through some of the names in a little bit. I would say wide receiver, because it's very difficult to find guys that have, the skills of an A.J. Brown or an Alec Pierce. It's very difficult to find those guys, and we know that the Patriots have tried to draft them in the past, and it hasn't worked. So I would agree with you on that. One more quick mention here. We'll just mention it. I don't know if you want to talk much about it, but Kansas City traded Trent McDuffie to the LA Rams for pick 29, as well as a 5th round pick, 6th round pick in this year's draft, and a 3rd round pick in next year's draft. And don't sleep on that 3rd round pick in next year's draft, by the way, because next year's draft, if the pundits are right, is supposed to be like an intergalactical draft. It is supposed to be one of the deepest and most talented drafts that we've seen in quite a while. So any thoughts about that? I was watching my guys, Evan Lazar and Alex Barth this week, and they kind of mentioned on Catch 22. Evan was saying that, this might be a sign that Casey's kind of kicking the can down the road with the ACL injury to Patrick Mahomes. Would you buy that, or do you think this is just that value's too good and they feel like they have corners and they'll be able to figure out the world without McDuffie?
Yeah, I think this is what you get. You have to, when you get a quarterback on a big contract, and this is coming for the Patriots, you're going to have to make decisions on where can you get by. That I would say the Chiefs have a very good track record, Steve Spagnuolo, of developing cornerbacks and finding guys and letting it, like they let L'Jarius Sneed go, where you watched him when he played in that postseason. You're like, this guy's awesome. They can't let him go. And then, they're just going to have to, you're just going to have to draft and develop at certain places. You're not going to be able to afford everything. And you got to figure out, whether it's, Chris Jones or what you're doing on the offensive line. Like, you're going to have to prioritize some things. And I do think this is relevant to the whole Christian Gonzalez thing. That's why, with what's coming, you better get, if Christian Gonzalez is one of your guys that you value the cornerback position, and I think we've talked about it, it's questionable whether the Patriots should value the cornerback position as a cornerstone position for this team, this defense going forward, given the scheme. Get Christian Gonzalez done now rather than later, because it ain't going to get any cheaper.
All right, going to run through some stuff here. Subscribe to the podcast. That word was subscribe. I don't know what I just said. Like and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass. That was better. YouTube channel where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots content. Also check out BSJ, Boston Sports Journal. $50 for the year. Just fitty. Bedard, Giardi, tag team in the Patriots film. Best sources around. Also, don't forget that Prizepicks. You want to download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, we got to kind of run through this because there was so much news, but we'll try to do the best we can. Free agency needs for your New England Patriots. 48 minutes in, baby, but we got there. It's not the length of the voyage, it's the voyage you took. All right, so need number one, Greg has edge. He mentioned that just a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to throw names out there, Greg, and you just kind of go from there. The big swings are Crosby. We just said how we felt about Crosby. That would be the big swing for the trade. Odafe Owe is out there. There are other names as well. Jalen Phillips is out there. Boye Mafe, Khalil Mack. And also another name that's kind of interesting that came out just a little while ago is Cam Jordan from New Orleans. He is going to hit free agency. Just kind of your overall approach if you were the Pats there.
I'm going, like I said, the whole edge wide receiver thing, you got to figure out what you're doing there. You got to get a splash at one of the places. I prefer wide receiver because I like the mid-level free agency plus the draft. So if I'm the Patriots, I'm going hard at Khalil Mack early, get him locked up, and then, probably go with somebody like Joseph Asai or Kingsley Enagbari as another option, sort of like a younger developmental type. I think those are the type of guys like Kayvon Chason who you could say their best football is probably going to be in front of them, and those guys are rare. I think you bring those guys and get them coached up here in this scheme, I think they could be pretty good. Cam Jordan, a guy like Cam Jordan or AJ Epinesa, those guys would be more of my like tier 3 if I strike out and other things. All right, these guys, Cam Jordan is old, but he's still a damn good player. He's a part-time player. AJ Epinesa was a guy that considered for the Patriots in the draft when he came out. I think that he could be better in this scheme than he was in Buffalo. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
All right. Your second need might surprise people. That's free safety. Of course, Jalen Hawkins is walking into free agency. You also have former Vrabel player, and Vrabel and Cowden love this dude. They brought him up multiple times when they drafted Craig Woodson last year in the draft. You've got Kevin Byard. You've got Kobe Bryant from the Seahawks. You've got Brian Cook from the Chiefs. How do you kind of grade those guys and rate those guys?
Yeah, if I'm the Patriots, I'm going straight for Kevin Byard. I still think he has some good football in him. He's in there. He's in his 30s. I think he's going to be 32, 33. But he obviously knows the scheme. His football character is impeccable. I think you're going to have to draft a safety and develop him. And I think the good thing about Woodson, Craig Woodson, is that I think because looking at my depth chart, he's played strong safety this year. With Hawkins was more of a free safety, but I do think that Woodson has the ability to play free safety. So that leaves you open in terms of what you can get. Like, for instance, like a Brian Cook, who's out there, I would say is more of a strong safety, or a Cam Curl. Those guys are strong safeties. So, Woodson, you could flip to free safety. He has positional versatility. But I go after Kevin Byard. They're going to have to get younger. That's another position where they don't have a lot beyond Woodson. I mean, as of right now, like Brendan Schooler might be your free safety on this team. And so bringing Byard in gives me a chance to have a leader, bring in a bunch of young guys. He could tutor them. So I like going hard after Byard, sort of mid-level free agency, lower-level free agency very early.
Interesting. I'd be fine with Hawkins coming back. He's not great. He's solid. Continuity, communication, teammate of Craig Woodson for a year at California. They got a good relationship. I wouldn't be too upset if they did that. All right, your third need is left guard. We've talked about Joel Bitonio. You got Elijah Vera Tucker. Kevin, is it Zeitler or Zeitler? Do we know? Zeitler. Sorry, Kevin. Apologies. Dylan Parham and Zion Johnson.
Yeah, I think that the Patriots need to get a starting level left guard. I mean, they might go internal because they've talked. I mean, they do have between Ben Brown and Jared Wilson, and also Garrett Bradbury at center. Like, you should say, all right, we're going to roll it back with Garrett Bradbury, and we're going to let Jared Wilson and Ben Brown compete at left guard. They could go that route. I would go get Joel Bitonio. Still has good football in front of him. Leader, stick him in between Campbell and Jared Wilson. You have that veteran leader there. Elijah Vera Tucker would be a guy that, if you wanted to, a lot of injuries, but a lot of talent and positional versatility. He can play anywhere from guard to tackle. And so I would love to kick the tires on him. Sometimes guys just they finally start to get healthy, and then they are for the rest of their careers. Remember, Julian Edelman got hurt all the time when he first came in the league for like 3 years, to the point where the Patriots let him go, look at teams in free agency. And then suddenly he was Mr. Durability, really. So Vera Tucker would be a guy that I would not mind. If you were okay with Wilson and Brown, Vera Tucker would be the guy that I would bring in just to see what happens.
I really like the idea. I don't know if they can be at this level of the market, because I think he's probably going to be paid a decent amount. Isaac Seumalo. I really like the idea of him. He was top 5 in both pass block win rate and run block win rate last year. He's 32, so he's a few years younger than Joel Bitonio. That's another name I would throw in there as part of
top of the market. Too rich for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like there's different feelings about how much he could get. So I don't think the Patriots would be paying a ton if you can't pay for him. If his market's out of control, then Bitonio makes a ton of sense. All right, a couple more things we got to get to. Don't forget CLNS, behind the scenes content, Celtics podcast, NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and Bruins Ringside. Need number 4 is tight end, specifically for Greg, a Y tight end. Explain why tight end, Greg, not WHY, but the actual letter Y, and who you're looking at.
Yeah, Y tight end would be it's sort of a dual threat tight end, but can definitely block. Rob Gronkowski is the prototype Y tight end. And Hunter Henry has somewhat been that guy, not the greatest of blockers, but a willing blocker. And The big thing is I think he was asked to do way too much this year in terms of blocking to help out the offensive line. And I think that contributed to him like wearing down over the course of the season. That if Hunter Henry has a place on this team, and I don't see why not, to me, he can't play wide tight end. He needs to be more of the F move tight end. And you bring somebody else in like a Charlie Kolar or Cade Otton. I would say those are the top like wide tight ends on the free agent market. You bring them in and kick Hunter Henry outside. You draft a tight end, what have you. I think that's the better plan to make the offense and Hunter Henry better this season. So that's a position I'm taking. I'm being serious about addressing, and especially in free agency, because it's one of those positions that tight ends aren't really tight ends in college. It's sort of like these offensive linemen. They rarely get in the 3-point stance, and it takes them a while at the pro level. So unless you want a receiving tight end, which is great, those guys are hard to just draft and plug in.
I love Cade Otton. I love the idea of Cade Otton. He's 27 years old. He's done some blocking. He can play inline. He played kind of like a power slot from time to time in Tampa, so he's got some versatility. And I think he's got some untapped potential because Tampa's just been loaded with so many different options at receiver. I think there's something there with him. I would be a big fan of that. I'm surprised, but at number 5, your 5th biggest need for this team is X wide receiver. I'm stunned. We already talked about Alec Pierce. We talked about A.J. Brown, but you got some other names on this list, Greg.
Yeah. I just think that, look, the other positions, at least a wide receiver, you do have a room and you have the ability to, add somebody, draft somebody, what have you. So it's lower down my list in terms of, what the Patriots have. I think the other positions, they don't really have anything. And so, I'm looking at guys like, obviously Alec Pierce and A.J. Brown are number 1 on the list. Other guys that could do it, Romeo Doubs is more of an inside guy, but he does have out speed, not very durable. Juwan Jennings is a player I've loved from the beginning. Jalen Naylor, these last guys, he hasn't had much of a role with the Vikings, and you think, because of what they have, and his best football could be in front of him. Diami Brown, I put on the list because remember, he used to be Drake May's favorite wide receiver.
That's right.
At UNC. So who knows? Maybe the quarterback goes to bat for him. And then Greg Dortch is a guy I've always liked to watch with the Cardinals, kick returns as well. Fast guy. So those are some of the names on my list.
I mentioned this, and this is why I take the receiver stuff serious, but with, just a little bit of time left here, we do have a Patriots signing. Like, it's not going to be we're not going to sit here and go bananas, but Jordan Schultz broke the news. And I think that's worthwhile because of what I said a little while ago on this podcast. The Patriots are signing former Cardinals outside linebacker Jesse Luketa, or Luketa, to a 1-year contract. The stats given was like 2024. So this looks like a purely a depth move. But I bring it up because, again, Jordan Schultz is the guy who talked about the Patriots spending big, and it just seems like he gets information from the Patriots with the Jedrick Wills stuff as well. So keep that in mind, underline it. Again, outside linebacker, apparently in 2024, he had 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, played for Penn State. So he played for the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals. So there you go, a little depth signing. All right, let's wrap it up with running back. What are you doing?
I'm not putting a lot of faith in Travion Henderson. I haven't really looked at the list, but I am finding some sort of, Antonio Gibson-ish running back. Also looking for somebody that might be able to return kickoffs. So, look for those guys. I'm just looking at the list. Samir White out of Las Vegas. He was a guy who was pretty good. Of course, that would be more of Henderson's role, but he was pretty good as the pass back in McDaniel's offense way back when.
All right, we said a lot. There was a lot on this one. I'm getting hangry, so I got to run. Hopefully all of you enjoyed this. We will talk to you. Greg, what are we going to do on Monday? Are we going to do something live on Monday? I figure we'll just sort this out right now on this podcast. Are we going to do something live on Monday? What are we doing? Free agency, the illegal tampering period is at noon. I'm open if you're open. I don't know what you want to do.
You mean noon, like live off the bat?
Screw it. We'll do it live, Greg.
I'm more of a maybe the end of the day type of thing.
I knew you were going to say that. I'll wait for your text at 11:30 on Monday morning to let me know what we're doing.
Okay.
We got to get out of here. Bye, everybody.